Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Simulationist podcast. This is the 140th iteration of the show, recorded on the 10th of May, 2015. My name is Josh Trelevin. The voice you're hearing now is Josh Trelevin. And the other voice you're about to hear,
Ryan Kirkby, co-host extraordinaire.
Hey, Ryan. How's it going this week?
Not too bad. A little busy, a little hectic, but I'm making the most of it.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, what have you been up to this week, Josh?
What have I been up to? A little bit of video games, a little bit of Minecraft, as usual.
Getting back into the swing of things after a little hiatus.
Logged in again. Was it last week that I rage quit, or the week before?
I think you rage quit last week, yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't stay away.
No. Everyone comes back eventually to Minecraft.
And I started rebuilding. I don't think I'm ever going to remap. I think that's what happened. I lost a bunch of maps.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever going to remap it. But that's who needs stupid maps anyways?
So long as you get a generally position, I go this way, it's over here. I go that way, it's over there. You could do a homemade map, sort of draw it out yourself.
Yeah, I could.
Just make sure there's a note at the bottom, may not be to scale.
Yeah, that's always hard. I played a little bit of Don't Starve again. I went back to that.
Going back on that. How did you starve?
Well, no. I mean, I didn't play that. I got to about day the winter.
Hey, congratulations!
And I haven't starved yet, so we'll see. I'm playing the librarian this time. There's I don't know if you know about Don't Starve, but there's about 5 or 6 different personas that you can have as pick your player. You don't get to customize. It's just these are, and they're very creative archetypes. Like the first one is Wilson, the gentleman scientist, and he's like a guy with crazy hair and he grows a beard.
Very nice.
The one I'm playing is the librarian who already starts the game knowing a bunch of extra recipes. Because the other characters have to research, how to create things,
figure out how to make it work. Yeah.
What do you craft? Like a crock pot, or you can make a shovel. You have to learn how to make a shovel before you can make a shovel.
I imagine that wouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah. And the librarian obviously has read a lot of books, so knows a bunch of these recipes to start the game. So that's
interesting advantage.
So I've been having fun with that. Oh, and another thing I've been up to is I found a new series on the internet. I guess it's a TV series. I'm not allowed to watch. There's no legal way for me to watch it.
Oh, yes, because of geographic limitations.
Yeah, it's on Yahoo Screen. It's Other Space. It's called Other Space. It's kind of it's like the spiritual successor. Is that I don't know if that's the right word, but to Red Dwarf. It's it feels to me like Red Dwarf. Well,
I don't know if you can call it a successor if there's still talks about doing another season.
Yeah, I was thinking I probably chose the wrong word there, because it's not actually nobody. It's not involved with the same people or anything. It's just
it is a thematic kin.
Yeah. Let's call it that, or rip off if you want. But it's just there's not the same characters or anything. It's just it's basically a space comedy. So that's about where the similarities end. But it is very funny. It's very clever, and I do recommend it. I can't. Yeah.
Officially, you have to be American to watch it then.
Well, yeah. I guess I can't recommend how to find it on a. If you're Canadian, but I'm sure you can find a way. The easiest, let me see. there are.
Go on a trip down to America. Binge watch it. Come on back.
Yeah, well, I guess I should just leave it at that. Yeah, just maybe get an American friend to, I don't know.
I will note.
Make a VHS copy.
Yeah, if you're taking, like the ferry from Victoria to Vancouver, you do spend some time in American waters there, so you could always claim you saw it just on that spot.
Yeah, something like that. That way, the internet police won't arrest you.
I don't think they have a naval internet police too, so I think you're doubly covered on that.
And one other thing I've been up to. I discovered another podcast, podcast, like in Victoria. It's a young comedian who I wanted to give a shout out just because I saw his comedy at like one of the open mics and I liked him. So
it made you laugh.
And then I found out he also had a podcast. So us Victoria podcasters are going to stick together.
Oh yeah.
Right? So I just wanted to plug his podcast. It's called Cynical Walrus. I'll put a link in our show notes to it. He might not be like he's a young guy and there hasn't been a new episode since March, so he might not be. It might already be dead.
It's not as regular as the podcast you're listening to right now.
Right, but I hope that he keeps it up. And if he does, then you'll have more episodes. But as of right now, it's just a couple of like people he interviews a couple of local. Each episode he interviews a different person from Victoria, and it's more focused towards stand-up comedy. It's not like it doesn't really have anything to do with gaming, although I find that like our generation and even a little older,
yeah.
I mean, basically gaming. Everyone does gaming, so yeah. So that's why I felt like I could, I don't know, give him a little shout out there too. Yeah, so Cynical Walrus. It's a.
Well, consider it like if he doesn't have any like very recent episodes up, consider that a chance to get caught up on things.
That's true. You can get in on the ground floor. A lot of podcasts can be a little bit intimidating because they'll have 140 episodes. Like, where do I even start?
Didn't we mention this like 50 episodes ago? And like, well, I haven't gone that far back. I'm just starting here, man.
Yeah. And the other thing about podcasts that's fun is when you pick the first couple of episodes, you get to see like a little bit of development. And I think if you go back to our earlier episodes, you'll see a little bit of we haven't grown that much. I don't know.
I think we've modified our style. It's a little bit more free flowing than it initially was.
I think we've got more comfortable. Well, I hope.
I'm okay with romancing the microphone a little bit more than initially.
That's good. That is really good. So more podcasts. And as always, check out all the wonderful other RPG podcasts like NPC Cast, and RPG Academy is another one I just discovered.
Very nice.
None of these are, of course, as good as us, but,
they have a slightly different flavor. I mean, like a podcast are like alcohol. Sometimes you want to try stuff out to see exactly what works and what doesn't. All the little blends and mixes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And don't forget, No Direction. That's KNOW. No Direction. That's another podcast that's really worth listening to. I think if you're into D&D and stuff, it's more of a Pathfinder, I think, podcast.
That's okay. We won't hold it against them.
Yeah. I mean, like us, we just go all over the place, right?
Are you kidding, man? Like when it comes to free-form thinking, I am working at like 4 or 5 different systems at once to figure out which is the best fit. It usually winds up being Tristat.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty awesome.
That's my preferable base when I'm not at D&D. It's over the Tristat. It's a system that I can call my own. I can modify to my heart's extent, and the owner is never going to come by and say, "Hey, knock it off." I think White Wolf owns it right now, and I don't think they're doing a heck of a lot these days. So I'm fairly bold on that sort of thing.
Although I'm still a big fan of D20 because technically the open license is still...
It's as valid as day one.
Yeah, it's always going to be valid. So you can always create stuff for the D20 3.5 edition version of D&D. So
there's a lot of fun to be had in D20 modern style.
Yeah.
D20 Future, D20 Past, D20 Apocalypse, all the D20 variants they had for that. If nothing else, is full. Each one of those books are just chock full of interesting ideas to do things differently.
Yeah. So that basically covers me. I listened to some podcasts, watched some TV, played some video. I mean, all the standard things, basically. So, yeah.
But it's what you did in those standard things that gets how each week is different.
Yeah, indeed. How about you?
Well, let's see. I got my daughter into the old Teen Titans series from about a decade ago.
Is she old enough to be into stuff?
Well, that's the thing is, I was thinking there was that one episode where they get caught in the magician's hat, Mumbo Jumbo's hat, and he turns them into animals. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, she likes animals, she likes the stuff like that, so I play it for her. She loves it. She's like watching the entire time. I'm paying attention. I'm looking at her. She's like dead on that. You're watching. And when the magician does this thing, Mumbo Jumbo, I guess the name of the magician, when he does this thing, it's presto. And throughout the rest of the week, she's been walking around, presto, presto, presto.
Nice.
Yeah, the boom she learned from her Uncle Jay, that's gone out now. She no longer points a wand and goes boom. She points and goes presto. And just from watching it once, that just completely changed things like that for her. So she was big into this one.
So is she when you talk about her, like somebody her age, and
it's how long it can keep her attention. The Powerpuff Girls movie, for instance, I could play that for her time and again, and she was glued to that. She does not, change out. She is watching what's going on there, which I think is a testament to how good some of these series are. If they can keep the attention of a 2-year-old, then they must be very entertaining and still maintain a nice primal sense.
Yeah, because I thought that 2-year-olds were kind of into Blue's Clues and Dora the Explorer. And
Mr. Maker gets her attention whenever he's on. She's Mr. Maker.
Okay, so she does
He's a British guy
stuff
who makes things. Yeah,
for her age group.
Yeah. So I like testing the waters because if there's one thing I learned, it's that kids have more depth than most people are willing to give them credit for. Mm-hmm. Take the Never-Ending Story, for instance. That's a kid's thing, right? It was a kid's book and turned like an all-age kid's movie.
Well, there's some very dark moments.
Exactly. I always thought these were big, strong hands, or I Am the Darkness, where he fights, the giant crazy wolf. Mm-hmm. And then, it's
actually,
the scene with the horse.
I remember being very scared, because I was probably 9 or so when I first saw it, but yeah, I remember being quite scared at parts of Never-Ending Story.
But it was still a great movie. All told, Sebastian was a bit of a weekend on things. He could have, they could have been written a little bit better, a little bit more believable. But what you can do, you're converting from a book. Things don't exactly work the same way. But yeah, it was a great movie. I loved it. Thanks to doing some cleanup, and moving stuff around, I found out I have 2 copies of the Never-Ending Story on VHS. It apparently is never ending. You watch one, then you watch the other, and it's the same darn thing.
They just keep showing up in my house. I don't know. Listeners, if you want to mail us some copies of your old Never-Ending Stories.
I'll even take the sequels, honestly. The second one, not as good, but still had its points in there.
But you still have a VHS player, too.
Yeah, I have the VCR, I do. Because it's still working, and so if it's
still
until
working,
it breaks. Yeah, which is going to be sad because I'm looking over there now. All the stuff that I've got for stuff. I some of my first things, pieces of fiction I ever had that were mine, truly mine, were like that. I've got some nice classics, Men in Black. I've got the Evil Dead trilogy. It's all there, and it is time to upgrade, but until it stops working. I've got
when you
Evolution.
Say upgrade, are you just going to get digital versions on your computer?
Probably. I'll skip the DVD Blu-ray phase and go straight to the digital format. Evolution was a very great movie. Sean William Scott, David Duchovny, done by Ivan Reitman. Effectively, there's a spiritual successor to the Ghostbusters franchise. Mm-hmm. Didn't get as good views, didn't get as good press publicity, but I loved it.
Yeah,
and
but you give it high marks. You recommend it?
I love it thoroughly. It is a wacky science comedy with great characters, great interactions between everybody. And what's not to like? I can't recall a single scene there where I wasn't at least entertained, if not, riveted to my seat. And that's all I really ask for my comedies. Keep me entertained. It's a comedy, buddy.
That's all, yeah.
Well, sometimes there are scenes that don't play well with me with some comedies. It's like, okay, I know where this is going. Let's just get it over with. Misinterpret the scenario and let's work through the whole thing. And okay, yeah. That's why I don't watch a lot of sitcoms as much as I used to. I see the plots before they actually... I'm not psychic, but I see the plots before they unfold on a lot of them. It's like, you guys could have swung me, taken me for a twist ending on that one, and oh hey, I didn't see that coming. Congratulations, you were humorous and clever.
Well, I recommend, in that case, I recommend Community.
Ah, yes.
I mean, if you don't like it, that's fine. You can watch an episode or two and
give it a shot, if nothing else.
Yeah, because I think it's a sitcom that does play a little bit with your expectations. Like you think, oh, it's going this direction, and then it acknowledges where you thought it was going, but then it doesn't. So it's like a
great.
smart
and
sitcom.
That's what I want from great comedies. But I'll ask from a basic comedy. Just keep me entertained. Okay. Don't let me say I've seen this before. Skip this scene. I know how the rest of it goes.
All right. Yeah.
So I will miss them when I wind up having to go. Plus, I can get so many good, like movies for like $5 for $1, $10 for $1 at the secondhand stores.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of nice. Like, I got 10 videos today, and all I spent was $1.05. Haha, because I had to pay tax. So that's always a nice thing to say. Especially because I remember them being like $20, $30 a pop back in the day. It's like, haha, all I had to do was wait 20 years. Now they're all mine. So, well. But yes, Zoe really did like the Teen Titans. She was very focused. I think I might wind up doing a little bit more with her, pick her up sort of thing. And then, after daycare and let her to help wind down a little bit in the evening and play, something like that for her. See if it can keep the attention, or maybe it was just the one episode. Mm-hmm. The more I learn, the more attention I see where she focuses, the better I can get at predicting the stuff in the future on this sort of thing.
Well, I mean, yes, but she's also... As you're going, she's also going to get older and develop,
which is why I'm always going to be testing the waters. I'm not going to say, okay, she liked this, now I'll keep showing that to her for the next 15 years.
Yeah. Well, how old do you think she'll be before she starts just telling you, like, no, this is what I want to watch? I guess, you're always going to have recommendations.
2 more years, maybe 3.
Until she gets, even until she's an adult, you're always going to say, well, here's a thing I think you would like. But
I dug this as a kid. Let's sit down and give her a shot together. Yeah. I'll make the popcorn. You go to the corner store and get some pop. Let's have a fun time with this.
I guess that's...
Present it from a good angle, right?
That's a good, fun aspect of being a parent, is you get to watch someone's taste develop.
Get this. It was awesome. I absolutely loved it. You have never seen it. Let's watch it together. That's the way you get to see the awesomeness that I saw, hopefully the same way that I saw it, and that way we get a nice family bonding time together.
Yeah. My brother is 12, and we have different tastes in movies.
And that's fine. I'd love to see how that develops for my daughter.
Yeah.
She's liking some of the stuff I liked when I was young. I want to see how that diverges. I want to see where it goes in a different path. And provided she doesn't like boring, sitcoms and, talk shows and all that, and I'll be there by her side to enjoy her stuff when she likes it too.
But we did like, another thing that sorry to bring this back to me,
sure
but
thing, yeah.
Another thing I watched Daddy Day Camp.
Oh, is that the one with Eddie Murphy, or was that Daddy Day Care?
Daddy Day Camp has Cuba Gooding Jr.
Oh, yes, that's the one.
Is that right? I think that's...
I believe I remember that.
I might have to go edit this back if I forgot who it was.
It stars, insert name here.
But one of the scenes is the kid, he gets sick, he eats something bad, he has to throw up, so he throws up inside the guy's tent.
Oh.
And this is the scene, I was saying, me and my brother have different tastes, but actually this scene we both laughed like crazy because his face, he peeks his head in the tent and the camera's just his face. Obviously you don't. Yeah, you could do a vomit through.
Playing things a little blue, a little
but it's just his face and his reaction. He's looking at the floor of the tent, and then he looks up, and and then his reaction to what's on the roof of the tent, and he's like, oh. We just cracked up like crazy at that. So
I think when it comes to showing vomit on a holistic area such as television and whatnot, you either go for less is more, where you imply what he saw and you don't really show it, or you go just full refuge and audacity, Stand By Me, Puke-a-rama.
Yeah, the Stand By Me, the pie eating contest scene.
Yes. Yeah, see, it was so good. Even so many decades later, it just pops back in your head. I still get a smile thinking about it.
Well, I watched that scene recently on YouTube, but it's very fun.
It doesn't matter when you saw it; it sticks with you for the rest of your days. It's one of those eternal scenes.
Yeah. Stand By Me is a good movie. Like, it's still
got layers.
great.
I watched it as a nice little thing. Oh, hey, kids go out adventuring when I was young. Then it became deeper as I got older and more mature. Yeah. So I think it's an interesting litmus test. Like, how deep do you see in there? You know, it determines how mature and deep you are.
I just realized.
But
I think we've
okay.
talked about this like 4 times already on the podcast, but that's fine.
Well, it's, but that's the thing, though. Is like every time I see it, it's a different movie. So true. Give it a watch.
And every time we talk about it on the podcast, it's a different thing, I guess.
But here's the thing, though. If you don't get too deep layers out of watching it, that's not a bad thing. Even just as like 4 young kids going adventuring someplace potentially dangerous and whatnot, having fun, escapades, that's still an amazingly good movie. So, I mean, like, you don't lose out by not being a deep, intellectual person on it. It just means it's not the same movie as someone else's. There's no problem with that. And it takes a very difficult movie to say that you just because you didn't get the deep layers doesn't mean you didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why I recommend it so highly. So long as you know the language they're speaking it in, and I'm pretty sure they've got it in other languages, translated out, you can still enjoy it. Although I don't know if it plays the same way in other parts of the world. Given they're from North America, whereas somebody maybe in more rural parts of the Eastern Europe won't see it the same way because it's like it's not like my childhood at all, so they can't get that level of connection. I don't know. I guess I'll have to find out. I'll take the movie over there next time I go over to Eastern Europe for some reason. Other than that, I got more into the Secret World. I've got into some of the auxiliary stuff, the post-launch content. And so I've got like a quantum brace on my forearm.
Ooh, quantum brace.
Yes.
Sweet.
It does amazingly weird things. You click it once and it does one effect for the ability, and then you click it again within 5 seconds and it has a different effect. It's quantum, differences. But that's only one out of the 5 different auxiliary weapons they have. I think I can do the quest and succeed. That'll get me a chainsaw. I could run around chopping zombies up with a chainsaw. And I was looking at the skins, because there's just one quantum brace, there's just one chainsaw. So, what do? Well, you make it look different, you make it look tailored to your character, you can get it changed up, you can get it gold-plated, you can get it done, with 3 different other styles. One with the Orochi Corporation with their sleek, stylish maneuver. Mm-hmm. Kind of weird for some of them, though. The Orochi whip seems almost like it's made out of, energy. Well, whatever, if that's your style, go for it. A Soviet attack. Oh, wait, no, they got 4, because they got, a corrupted and a demonic style, depending on how, overpowered, psycho style you want to go for that. So I was looking at some of the stuff, and I'm like, ooh, this would go well with this. I want to get this, and I want to get this one here. But to get those skins, you got to go through some of the higher-end dungeons. That's getting towards end-game content. So
okay,
that's as good of incentive for any as for me.
So you're still enjoying the game, yeah?
Deeply enjoying it. I've left the wonderful New England island of Solomon's Island, and I'm now over in the Egypt area.
Is your content mostly single player, or is there multiplayer?
Well, that is the secret of the Secret World, as most people like to claim. It's secretly a single-player MMO. Aside from dungeons, which are not obligatory in any stretch, it's basically a single-player game. You don't have to play with people. You can. I mean, every time I'm going by, Kingsmith, to go get this or go try something out there, hey, I noticed this person's on the quest. Maybe they need a little help. I'll follow along behind. They start and get low on health. Maybe I'll heal them. Maybe I'll blow the crud out of zombies for them.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's no stuff. Just because they're not part of the same faction as me doesn't mean I can't help them out. And that was very nice.
You're all fighting zombies, after all.
Technically, we're all under a truce, as one of the quest givers initially says to you. Now we are the closest of enemies. So,
is there do you know if there's an end game where it's similar to Warcraft, or it's just raiding and just?
That would be Tokyo areas,
so there is.
And that's increasing stuff that gets you better effects here and there. Not demanded. You don't really get that much better for items. It's, hey, I can do better for my skills now, or I can get this much maxed out. Not that big a thing. But if you want to, it's there for you.
Do you expect, when you get to the end, like, do you think you're going to run it again with a different faction, or do you think you'll
that's
just
the
keep
thing.
on
I
grinding?
recreated, my own character in there, and hey, look, I found out with my main character, like, if I get issue 6, which is a DLC pack, I could go get myself, these tokens, of currency that would get me, like, Indiana Jones style, clothing. So it's like, well, I made myself in the game recently. I have an Indiana Jones hat. Maybe I should adventure far enough with this guy to, get myself a fancy hat to make it work. So, it's like, that's the weird thing about the clothes. It's like, you have to adventure and you have to work hard to get the clothes, and you got to earn them, even though they don't give you any stat bonuses. So it's like, interesting, but I guess it makes sense. So let's go for it. But yeah, I think I'll have a lot of fun trying things out, seeing how the different factions like encourage or discourage me. Like anytime, like with the Illuminati, I'm doing something that doesn't help their bottom line, I am reminded of it by my superior. Maybe the Templars say, this, you have helped save the island a little bit. Congratulations, you're doing the job. But don't forget about the main thing. Don't make sure they don't bomb the island as soon as they can get there. Fun things like that. But, generally, I could try a different style. I could try, like, a tanking sort of spec as I go adventuring. Who knows? Maybe it is more my style. Maybe it's not.
Well, when you do dungeons, is it similar to Warcraft in that there's different roles? Or does everyone...
Healing, tank and DPS sort of stuff.
Okay.
Survivability is, I guess, a fourth term for it. But there's never, like, we need 4 survivors in here. Survivability is like an extra factor each one should have to help pump up their roll.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Which is very interesting. So yeah, thumbs up. I'm still encouraging it. I'm still enjoying it. Okay. Especially some of the NPCs. They got a character who's like a several 1,000-year-old mummy, apparently. He's urbane, he's witty, he's charismatic. He looks like a several 1,000-year-old desiccated corpse, but he's wearing a very nice, like as he calls it, a 1,200-pound outfit. Because British accent going on with him now. He has the British affectation to make himself sound modernly classy as opposed to like old dynasty Egyptian, whatever
sure.
sort of accent that might be.
Well, yeah, you'd think he would learn new language. Well, that's weird because I've seen some videos like. Thanks to YouTube, because I never would have met, people who are over 100 years old. But I've seen videos of people who are, this is the oldest man in the world, the oldest woman in the world, and they talk, and the way they talk is kind of annoying. It's really cool because they're super old and they have lots of interesting things to say. But on the other hand, it's like they're very measured and slow in in what they say. And they just take their time about it. And, I wonder if, a 1,000-year-old person would just be so, aggravating to talk to.
Well, see, that's the thing, is this guy does, he's a trade prince sort of thing of the kingdom, as the faction is called.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was, a bunch of, higher-up people in Egypt that decided to come back, and he's still making trades. So he can't be slow about it, because when you're in trades, it's got to happen fast, got to do it now, and you can't be just an old crotchety person, you got to be charismatic, and you got to make them like it, even when you're saying no.
So you can be charismatic for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, obviously it's fiction, but I'm just curious about that. How would that really work?
He has to keep up with the times, sort of thing. That's why he's not dressed up, this is the height of fashion when I died, back in 1800 BC. It's like, no. It's like, dude, he's wearing a very nice suit. He's got some good style. It's like, hey, I bet you've never banished a demigod before. I should charge you for this. Oh, okay, it's free, but you're costing me money on it. So he's like, I'll let you do the quest for me. I'll be good experience for you. I should even charge you. Oh, okay. I'll do it for free, but you're costing me. So I wanted more quests from this guy. I'm digging him. But apparently there's 2 quests. He's part of the storyline in the area, but it's like, I got done the quest. I kind of wanted to have more with him. No, but then again, there's been a number of NPCs in there that I enjoyed. There was the Hayden Montag, the head master of Innsmouth Academy, and he's like, oh boy, yeah, I love him. He's kind of crazy, but very dedicated. I want to hear him speak even more. I want to hear everything he has to say. He's hilarious. And then, the other characters pop up. I guess it's a good testament to how well they're writing if I want to just hear other people talk. It's like, oh, wait, I'm not going to get a blue rare item out of this just by, listening to you talk. I'll listen to you anyways. So I said that says something, right, about what they're doing, so. Hooray! Other than that, I accidentally thought up a novel this week.
Okay, well, you got to get that written down. But are you going to give us a little taste?
No, the interesting thing was I started off with a concept I like this Tri-Stat thing. I like for the system, and I like the. But I've never actually played the Tri-Stat on the tabletop. It's always been online sort of thing.
Okay.
And I like the Secret World. I think it's got a plot. So it seems, well, why don't I combine the two? Try and play the Secret World style game with the Tri-Stat rules, because you can play anything with Tri-Stat. And so I start, working out an idea for, a one-off adventure for you. Mm-hmm. And one thing leads to another, and I'm like, oh. Instead of it being a horror campaign, I think I've come up with the basis for a buddy spy comedy novel.
Huh?
And it's just one's a vampire, one's a clone. Can they destroy enough zombies to figure out what has happened to the isolated, health reserve?
So is he the clone? Is he a clone of the vampire, or the vampire's previous? Nothing to do with.
No, they're just the way I figure it is how I've always said: you want to live to be 100 years old, you have to eat and exercise like you're going to live to be 100 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do not get to be 100 years old drinking fountains of chocolate with a straw.
Mm.
It's good. It's no wonderful stuff. But
it's a trade-off.
It's gonna kill you. You're not gonna live to be 100 eating bean burritos. I'm sorry. You got to eat healthier than refried beans to live that long. You make it part of your diet, but don't make it a staple. Don't make it like the core of your three square meals, right?
You can't live to 100 eating anything of just one thing.
Well, you're going to want to keep it to the nice leafy greens. Make sure you get your good high fiber roughage going through the system and all that.
Okay. Yeah.
So, if you want to be immortal, a proper immortal like a vampire, you have to be careful. What sort of blood am I drinking? How healthy is this? And make sure you're going through the right stuff so that, you're not decaying your corpse. You're not stuck in a rotting husk sort of thing. And meanwhile, the clone, I was figuring, the clone's the infinite, immortal / disposable combination, right? You can always copy his brain, they'll just like Xerox his brain into the new body sort of thing, and just print him off where he was when they copied his mind. But it's if that happens, they usually use the degeneration of clones. You grow a clone from nothing but a bunch of cells into a adult human body.
Okay.
You get deterioration. So I figure, what if he's got a 6-month life expectancy? If they want to copy his brain near the end of the 6 months, so be it. But he's only got 6 months to live anytime he pops out of the clonomat or whatever it's going to wind up being.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Well, if you're going to live only 6 months, it doesn't matter really how many chocolate fountains you're drinking out with a straw. What's the worst that can happen? 6 months of bad lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then, hey, all of a sudden you're back in a new rejuvenated body, or it never happened because they decided not to opt to copy your brain.
I feel like I've seen several movies of that. The guy, somebody finds out they have cancer or something like that, and then I think Saw is one example.
50-50 with, I think there was a good couple actors in that one.
Okay.
Gordon Joseph Levitt, I think, was the big star in that one. He had 50-50 chance of living or dying, and so they, a bucket list and all that sort of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the concept is well, you know what? If I'm incredibly disposable, it doesn't matter what I do to my body. It's either 6 months from now I get a fresh one, or this never happened. I die. They take my previous brain save and they go with that. So might as well enjoy myself. So you get like an odd couple, Felix and Oscar sort of combo going on there.
Okay, yeah.
And so you got the nice friction going on there, but they both wind up, serving the same sort of force. They'd be secret agents for a government, or I guess meta government thing, like a UN.
The Illuminati, or you mean?
I don't know. It could just be some sort of secret UN forces to try and keep the world from showing it how crazy things really are getting.
Like in what's the
all sorts of conspiracy theories on that one, not really.
XCOM, that kind of.
XCOM, I suppose X-Files even works too. Yeah. But I had a nice whole thing plotted out how things could work, and it all just starts forming. It's okay, yeah, you've got these two different personalities, and it's Oh, no, that's not like a concept for like, okay, like your starting character can be this, or here's some nice options for like a character that can come back fairly easily from a lot of damage. And it's like, oh, no, wait, if we get this option and this option, put it together, it's like, oh, that's a nice little novel I've got here for at least an outline going on. Wow, that's very interesting. So I guess I might have to sit down and write something like that. I mean, I was rather impressed with the concept. Like, most of the time I can think of a good scene here or a premise there, but it doesn't flesh itself out the full, like, arc that this whole story did for me.
That's good. Well, next week, you'll have to come back, and the listeners will hold you to account, and you'll have to have, I don't know if you'll actually write actual pages, but maybe more of the outline.
Yeah, at least get, like the whole thing sketched out for, start, middle, end, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. What the characters really are like, what I'm imagining, how well does it work when I actually put pen to paper and, flesh everything down.
Sounds good.
But, yeah, I was rather impressed with myself that week. And it just started off like, I'll try the Tri-Stat system and I'll, like do a one-off campaign for Josh in a horror, supernatural vein. It's like, oh, wait, no, buddy comedy happened. Sorry.
I guess I'll have to stick with the D&D campaign we have going.
Well, that's okay. If you want to do a one-off sort of thing, I can still make that happen. And you just might have to realize that at some point the backgrounds are going to get utilized for a novel. Or maybe I can hold on to this idea just a little bit, get everything ready for it, and then when NaNoWriMo comes around, blast off. I got the plot, I got everything set up, and then just start writing like a madman.
Yeah, that's good. So write 0 words or 0 actual words. Maybe you can write backstory.
Well, that's always been my problem with NaNoWriMo in the previous years, is I catch myself trying to come up with an idea, and I can't get anything written here. Next thing you know, I'm a third of the way through the month. I've got nothing written and half of a plot line set out. Yeah. This way, if I get everything set up, I visualize in my mind. I go to bed a little early. I just sit down and close my eyes and think in my head, how does this play? How does this scene play? How does it go here? How do I do that?
Well, yeah, because NaNoWriMo it's one way to write a novel, but it might not be, it's
definitely not for everybody.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the best way, because maybe there is no best way, but there might be other better ways, because...
Well, personalized best ways.
One of the ways to properly write a novel is to have everything already in place and ready to go before you even... write any words.
Some people, are so good at this sort of stuff, they don't even need to consciously think. All they need to do is start writing, and then the characters write themselves. What was just really happening is they're so good at knowing how to plot things out, they don't even need to really sit down and do like diagrams and charts and how everything goes. Mm-hmm. I'm not that kind of person. Not yet, at least.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that helps a lot with that is just having read a lot, which you have and I have.
I'm not the best well-read. I mean, I get a joke about, like, Wuthering Heights when it's mentioned in a TV series or movie. Mm-hmm. I haven't actually read Wuthering Heights.
Well, I've read how many Dragonlance novels have you read in your lifetime?
All of them minus the last 7 years.
Okay, so you kind of trailed off a little bit.
Well, I mean, so much happened, I'm going on other things. I've got a lot of the books around here still on my to-read list, but it's like, oh my goodness, I have to, cut or, like this, because, I mean, there were some pretty poor times in my life, and you can't get the fresh, novel as soon as it comes out when you don't have any spare money, right? So once it slides a little, it's easy to slide a lot, so be it.
I guess it's hard to, like, I read a lot of Star Wars novels when I was 15 to 20 age.
Oh yeah, when you have that nice disposable income sort of thing going on.
Yeah, and disposable time, I suppose. And I don't remember absorbing anything about story structure from those. I just remember devouring them, basically.
Well, that's the thing about the Dragonlance ones, is I did notice stuff, because they had little skips in bits where they didn't, like go through the dungeon and explore that sort of thing. It was just mentioned after. The dungeons were actually stuff that the characters played through in the modules they were releasing when the novels were fresh. And so you'd have your pre-gen characters, which were the heroes of the the Lance. All the main characters there, how you played them, not necessarily how they got played, but that's how it worked out. And sort of things like, like you go through the dungeons that way, and then you read like what the characters happen in between. And which is a very, very interesting style. I mean, it's like 3 decades old or so now, but it's something you don't see a lot of. Like, here are the dungeons. You want to read, like, how did you get to the dungeon? Read the novel. It was a very interesting concept on that way, and very nice cross-media platform stuff. You want to know about the plot? Here's the book for you. You want to do a hack and slash sort of thing? Congratulations, you start at the dungeon. Let's go. So I kind of dig that. Other than that, not a heck of a lot this week.
Anything else?
No, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff I've been doing, but nothing else really worth mentioning compared to that.
Sure.
Although I did, okay, maybe one last thing is I did start reading a webcomic called Schlock Mercenary. And it's a small one, they do like so many days a week sort of thing, usually 3-panel things with a joke. I think it's on Saturdays or Sundays they do a full page, kind of like the Garfield style, like most weekdays, 3 panels, big one on the weekend. That said, it is nothing like Garfield. It takes place in the future, space, and all sorts of fun advances going on, ancient civilizations like 10 million years old, and all that stuff that's going on there. And I've liked it, one, because it seems to be well written. The characters are likable and all that. Not exactly my cup of tea for the graphic style, but it's consistent, and that's really the big criteria for me. If you can't draw a person looking like that person every time, I'm going to have a very hard time following things. Mm-hmm. So if you can draw the person consistently that way, even if I'm not a big fan, it's like, oh, you're not doing too much for shading or anything like that, whatever, it still works. But things change. The ships change, the personalities change, the circumstances change because of the things that are happening. They get called out for a mission, the mercenaries, and mission creep happens and things go from bad to worse, and then, complications arise back and forth. And I find it, if nothing else, a really great read to figure out how to start layering your quirks and your twists to make sure nothing seems too contrived, but everything starts piling up on each other to make it seem much more insurmountable. It's like when all these things are going wrong, when everything seems black and bleakest, it seems like an insurmountable hill, but really, it's a bunch of small challenges stacked one on top of the other. When they start resolving each other, this is no longer an issue, this is no longer an issue, they've taken care of that, it comes on down, and they look like they're geniuses. How did they get over top of that huge pile of obstacles? It was like one obstacle at a time. So it's a very good read that way. Very interesting, I think, because it takes place in the future, and they've got all sorts of future tech. Very interesting what you can and can't do. And there's very little you can't do when you go through all the ends of it. But what they think they can do and can't do is always the big thing. Can you do this? No, we don't have this. This is going wrong here and all that stuff. Very interesting style to go through. And I haven't read from start to finish, but I'm liking what I've read, and especially the structure on it. So I think even if you're not big on the genre, like a space comedy, like the other space, I still think you can learn a lot from it by seeing how they do the plot and seeing how they overlap their various troubles. So there you go. That has been my other one this week.
All right, cool.
So I suppose we should get into a main topic this week.
Yeah, do we have a main topic? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is it comes out from the how to go through role playing in a situation and stuff like D&D.
Okay.
Because there's the two main camps. I get 2 camps and a hybrid camp.
Sure,
one is you role play it out. It's a role playing game. You role play it. The other one is dude, you are not your character. You're not expected to be as your character. I mean, you may be good, but you're not 18 stat worthy on this sort of thing.
So we're talking about kind of social skills.
Yeah.
So like diplomacy.
The social skills are the easiest one to demonstrate out because you can easily role play a social skill. Mm-hmm. In theory, as opposed to okay, you want to try and do a physical skill. I'm going to need you to lift the couch. Yeah. That doesn't really happen. No one asks you to lift the couch in order for your character to succeed at the strength check, and yet they will ask you to okay, well, role play yourself through this thing to make sure the guards don't try and stab you with their guard staffs. Or spears, I suppose, as other people call them. And so, that's the big thing. Is like the one camp says, you got to role play. It's a role playing game.
Just talk it out. Just talk as if you're your character, and the DM says, and the DM basically role plays the NPC.
Adjudicates the whole thing out and come the end of how well you did.
And sometimes
you don't even need to roll.
Yeah.
The other people say, dude, there's stats, you're not your character, you've got ranks in this, your skill levels, all this or whatever, points or pips or whatever the system you're using. Mm-hmm. Make the roll. And then you got the hybrid camp that says, try and do both, make your argument, roll your check, and I guess you get a modifier or penalty based on how good you are or how bad you suck.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like it's pretty obvious that some form of hybrid is pretty much you have to go with that.
Some people aren't always comfortable with one or the other, though.
Okay.
Some people are born thespians. I must speak my nature on this one. Other ones are like, dude, I do not have this many ranks in diplomacy. I do not have the 18 charisma. I could try doing that, but I'm just going to fail on so many levels. We got to just do a roll, otherwise I'm not being my character.
Or you get the guy who's like, I'm barbarian. And like he's playing his barbarian character. He's like, I'm barbarian. You give us princess now, or we smash you. And I
like her, so I will bop her on the head in the true caveman fashion. Next thing you know, you're all in jail for assault.
Yeah, and I don't know if the DM says, I'll just roll diplomacy for you.
Well, I do like sometimes the hidden checks on that sort of thing. Like, you think you did well. And that works for like trap detection.
I mean, imagine if that barbarian on that check, like that player is like, give me, and then he's like rolls a 20 on his diplomacy, and the NPC is really impressed by your knowledge of the barbarian culture.
He is totally a barbarian groupie. He will do this, but you have to wait till he goes back home, comes back with his authentic, hand quotes there, club, and have you sign it as a true barbarian. This would totally make his day.
He spent 10 years growing up with the barbarians and the barbarian tribes, or he was adopted from the barbarians. And he was
supposed to be a barbarian, but he got abducted by civilized folk, and thus he always longed to be it. And thus, because you epitomize what he believes he could have one day been, he is like swayed to your cause. But that's the thing. That's what we're going to wind up talking about. It's like how to determine like what the heck happened on this roll. Like how do you explain it away? Because if you're doing just rules, like my character moves like this much, I make a diplomacy check, roll, succeed or fail. It can become so abstract, it's almost hard to explain what happened.
I love this might not work, but I love the idea of like a miniature is like you set up the grid, but instead of like, a dungeon room, it's the
ballroom
court or the ballroom, and like you have to walk over to each character and diplomatize them in turn. It's like, walk over to him, 6 squares of movement, chat for 6 seconds, and see what you can do, and then,
play it out a bit longer than that, I suppose. It'd be tactical rounds for like a ballroom situation. I could see making it like a half hour per.
Yeah, sure.
So that way you can fight like, okay, dude, this is not like an eternal ballroom. You've got so many hours before people start going off, and then you've got secretly rolled how long before the people like leave of their own accord. It's like so and so. Okay, 1 die 4 hours. He leaves 3 hours in. The other one's he's a party animal. He gets a 2 die 6 roll. He's there. He'll be there till like the sun.
And I guess your stats change as the night progresses, and you drink more mead or whatever.
I think if it's going to be a ballroom, it's probably a wine. Like fine elven spirits.
Okay,
and unless you're going for like a different style, like a dwarven ballroom sort of thing, you got to make fatigue checks as you're going through the dances. You got to like really do the big dwarven stomp dances and all that. Because I imagine
the Ukrainian style with where you crouch down and kick out your legs.
I'm thinking a little bit more metal than that, but that's close to it. Yes.
Dwarven head banging. Okay.
Well,
Dwarven beard banging.
Yeah, and so you got to make constitution checks to make sure you don't fatigue yourself.
Beard banging sounds kind of gross.
It sounds like a fetish. We'll say dwarven stomp dance, and that way it'd be like like that band Stomp that you can see all over the place.
Okay.
It'd be kind of like what they do there, except when you're in a dwarven ballroom, it's not like fine gowns and all that. You're wearing like 10 pounds of metal minimum. Those are for the slinky outfits. Most of them are wearing 20 to 50 pounds of heavy plated dwarven forged steel.
Oh, they were okay. I was wondering if you were going to go steel or like Mr. T gold chains kind of style.
Well, if you want to go that way sort of thing to show.
Probably the richer dwarves probably would have gold chains. Yeah.
They could cross it out. Maybe that's a thing denoting how things always like. Oh yes, you can tell he's not exactly a field general. His epalts, they are gold. You can tell he hasn't spent time in the field there. But yeah, you can make and then it's like constitution checks to make sure you don't get absolutely tanked on the dwarven spirits, because you got to keep up with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of fun that way. So that way, a physical character might wind up performing better than the purely,
if you can hold his liquor, sure.
So yeah, you're designed purely for role-playing encounters, but you have such a poor Constitution score. You didn't make it past the second hour. I'm not great at it, but I got a chance to redo my checks until I succeeded based on take 20. I was rocking it out that long.
Well, couldn't you if you're truly a good diplomatizer, couldn't you like maybe make a bluff check and dump your drink into a plant or something? Or
I don't know. The chances of getting caught on that one, that's going to be some pretty negative penalties on there.
Do you think dwarves have plants in there? Maybe like mushroom plants,
Fungus
like potted
and all that?
mushrooms?
Well, you could always work it as like instead of a wonderful like crystalline chandelier, which you might expect for dwarven stuff. No, they've got like a wonderful, like a lattice worked, and perfectly, like bio sculpted phosphorescent, fungal display thing up at the top.
Oh, that's kind of weird. Oh, that sounds a little dark elfy to me actually.
Well, the dwarf's got to see a little bit too. I mean, it's only 60-foot dark vision, right?
That's true,
You're in a big ballroom. It can't be just 60 feet of ballroom. So,
Yeah,
I mean, that way you get a little
bit.
bit of lighting thing going on in there, Heck, what if they wind up, or, make up some sort of, like, phosphorescent metal for them? Come up with a concept of a glow-in-the-dark metal.
Uranium.
We'll call it glow metal, or something like that, or, moonlight, because that way you get the "ite" ending for like a mineral sort of thing, and then it has a nice soft glow to it. Moonlight.
Okay.
And they'd be working moonlight in on like their walls and all their designs and embossment stuff, so that way the whole room has a nice soft glow to it. How's that sound? There you go.
It still sounds kind of elfy. I like fires and like braziers and.
Okay, that could work with where they're dancing. You got to dance around the fire, and you're doing it while drunk. You fail. There's a 50% chance you fall in rather than fall back.
Yeah, maybe.
Is this the kind of ballroom situation where you need medics on hand? Not just because this person passed out drunk. It's, oh God, he fell in the fire. Pull him out, get a heal spell on him. There you go. So that way, if you're not, like, I'm not normally high class enough to make it to these dwarven, fancy balls, it's like, that's okay. Because you're a cleric and you got healing spells, and they always can use a cleric. So you manage to sneak in, the same way people sneak into these sort of fancy soirees as a waiter, right? It's like same sort of role. How does that sound?
Yeah,
I'm liking these dwarven balls, man. If the elves can go stuff themselves, I want to go to a dwarven party.
Yeah, I think maybe that got us off a trick a bit. But we were talking about diplomacy. I was wondering, like, what really happens when diplomacy fails? Like, what's...
You can always go on the fallback, like, oh, you didn't anticipate this fall quirk of things.
Okay.
You see it all the time in stuff like manga and, like, weird comedy, like, for, like, I think Alien Species things does it best. Like, oh, like, how, like, you didn't know that you said it with, like, the wrong, like, side of your face towards them. Because you were like trying to face everyone, but if you face someone on the right side of the face, that's anything you say is seen as a positive light. Any slight gaffe you might make is seen, and it's like, oh, he's trying to be a positive. But the left side of the face towards them, and that's always like the sinister side, and that's like anything that you say that way could be seen as like a negative slight. Anything that could be ambiguous is taken in the worst possible light because he's left facing you, man. Mm-hmm. There was no way he didn't mean that. Oh, turns out, you didn't know that at all. It's like, but you were left facing him, so he takes that ambiguous line as meaning the wrong thing. Congratulations, you've just insulted him.
Yeah, and because in some ways, like D&D deals with these interesting situations where you have maybe like foreign mercenaries coming into like a kingdom, they don't know the ways, and so you have to deal with diplomatic situations where the foreigners don't. They don't know. They have to navigate that. And in some ways, the existing court, they have to be like, oh, well, we understand that you're an outsider. Of course, you're not going to get everything. But, here, don't do this, this, and this.
But when the barbarian walks up to the punch bowl, takes it all with him as he starts sloshing around and chugging it. I mean, that explains, like a 1 or 2 on your diplomacy and etiquette checks, right?
I suppose. And, well, that's another thing I guess we could
I know he's not part of our culture, but come on.
Yeah, because that's kind of like there are sort of universal... I don't know if... Maybe there aren't really universal faux pas, but I feel like, just grabbing, walking into a place, like grabbing the punch bowl.
But amongst the barbarian tribes, that's a show of dominance. I want to show to you that I am worthy of you to try to talk. If you want the punch, you might have to take it from me. Be warned, there's punch with this punch.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can see it as like, especially for like a half orc sort of thing. It's like yes, when orcs get together, they definitely try and establish dominance, and that means manipulating the resources. They still have the food and whatnot there, but you don't actually eat or drink the stuff. You have to try and collect it and hoard it as part of like the orcish, soirees to show that you are like the alpha orc,
Yeah, that just, I can imagine a culture maybe like that, but that, in general, I feel like that
greedy, evil humanoids.
I feel like that wouldn't evolve in a culture because, like, you kind of do have to show deference to your host, unless you're, like, literally, like, attempting to take over and, like, kill them or whatever you have to do. But I think in most cultures, I think you would show deference to you would be a little bit submissive. Maybe there's some that would be like, no, you got to be, I don't know.
You have to, you got to really show your aggressive side here. You got to show dominance. I mean, who's going to want to talk to a loser?
But I guess, the other thing about taking the punch, taking something, is that
being greedy at the scene.
Well, the person you're really pushing around, like the king, doesn't carry punch bowls around. That's what the servants do. So maybe if you are, the barbarian is grabbing, he's like, no, here, I'm going to be your servant, and I'm going to, take care of this for you.
Or what if, and this sort of thing is like, okay, like the orc chieftain, like the king orc and all that. It's like, yeah, okay, you guys fight amongst your resources, but whenever I ask for some of it, you have to give it to me to show that I am the lord above the lords within this argument here. And so it's like, yeah, you got the punch bowl, but the orc king comes up and he wants like a glass of punch. You got to give him the glass of punch without arguing. Otherwise, congratulations, you have angered him. So you still got to know your place, but you just got to fight for who's second best in this thing.
Okay, I'm liking this, but here's the other thing. Like, what about the guy whose job it is to serve the king punch? Like, isn't he going to be super pissed at you?
No, because in his case, he'd be like the word of the king. So you wind up punching this guy. It's like, congratulations, you've just punched the king by proxy.
Okay, so that guy gets to step back and watch whatever you do
with
his job.
Yeah, it's like the benefit of like working directly under the man sort of thing. It's like, yeah, okay, you're just a butler, but oh hey, congratulations, you're Alfred Pennyworth. You are Batman's butler. You get away with a lot more stuff than a regular butler would.
I feel like knocking things, like, this is the other problem with diplomacy, is like, if you knock things around and like make a big mess or like, kill one of his guards or something like that, you're not really inconveniencing the king so much. I mean, yeah,
you definitely inconvenience the guy you killed.
But yeah, you're basically being a jerk to all his help. You're being like, and that's bad, obviously bad manners, but I don't know if that's gonna.
Well, what if they're just like slaves? What if they're like in this case, like a bunch of like elven slaves?
They're still his slaves.
Yeah, but you got to show that your elven life means nothing. You darn pointy-eared little willow freak. That's why even though you're the king's slave, you're still just a slave and you're just an elf.
I guess, yeah, it depends on the personality of the Khan or whatever that you're trying to impress. Like, if he's the kind of guy who would just kill his own slaves just willy-nilly. On the other hand...
Or it's the vampire courts. They might just be slaves, but they're also a food source. The servant is the punch bowl. They get him nice and soused beforehand, so he's like an alcoholic punch bowl sort of thing. Anyone gets a nip they want.
And here's another question. Like, does a failure in diplomacy, like, is that what leads to combat? Like, okay... A lot of, like...
Yeah, okay, let's get out of the ballroom situation on this one, sort of thing, where you're trying to talk to, like, the bandit king or something.
Yeah, because a lot of what happens when I play D&D, I like to follow sort of rules of engagement. I always like to talk first. Like, I know that's probably annoying to some of my fellow players.
If they come, like, charging down, the line sort of thing, over the hill, and they've got, mounted combat.
But, yeah, my preferred, like... introduction to an encounter. Also, as a DM, to be honest, like, I like to introduce my encounters with, like, here's your chance to speak to this guy, and maybe you can't work it out. And I'm wondering if that the end of the diplomacy sort of either leads to, if you succeed, happy or whatever, or you go your separate ways, you don't fight. Is it a question of success does this and failure means combat? Because players like combat. I mean, that's fun.
Well, I mean, the D&D system itself is based off combat.
Yeah.
Stuff like the White Wolf, various systems does seem a little bit less combat oriented and a little bit more role play oriented in that case. So you can probably get at least as far, being a suave, debonair vampire as you can being a bloodthirsty, murderous vampire.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah. Well, and can you just not invest any whatever points or whatever into
I've seen people do that
skills
before. You're basically I believe in the modern terms before they did the New World Darkness, the term was shovelhead. The evil half of the vampires, there's the ones trying to make sure hey, we should try not freaking everyone out, and then there was the other side, we are meant to be rulers and predators, be that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And what they do when they're fighting, they'd get the evil ones would get a whole bunch of people and just turn them quickly into vampires, and beat them in the head with shovels until they were so ready and hungry to fight that they were basically like mongrel dogs. And those would be the ones that had no social skills planned in. They weren't a purposely sired vampire. They were just like a meat shield.
Okay, shovelhead. Weird. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, but it does get the point across just for the name, right?
Yeah, it does.
They were always very good at that, giving them just the right name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that case, yeah, you can be a vampire with none of those social stats and say, well, I was meant to be a shovelhead, but, I wound up, being smarter than they thought and good enough in combat that I just didn't die. So they decided not to put me down afterwards.
Woo. Yeah.
Remind you, that would usually require an interesting social check, but that's kind of hard to do when you've been getting a shovel to your head and you've been starved of blood for a while. Such is life, or unlife, I suppose, in this case.
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily needs to mean failure equals combat. It could mean failure equals penalty. I think one of the nice things about that is trying to charm the blacksmith into hey, can you put my stuff at the top of the list, and make sure I get a good price and all that, and good diplomacy check in this case is, hey, yeah, they'll get started on yours right away, and you know what, you got your natural 20, so you impressed them so much, they'll do it at cost for you.
Okay.
Because it's you increase their rating towards you from neutral to friendly to hey, basically charmed, versus unhappy to hostile.
I guess because
where it's you fail that one up, and congratulations, you've insulted his work in some way.
And he's mad enough to hit you, clock you.
He's mad enough to say, we don't serve you here. You're going to have to leave before I call the guard to take you away.
Well, here's another thing that happens sometimes in in books and movies. Is somebody will throw one punch. They'll be they'll get so steaming mad about whatever happened,
or they'll do something like fling something across the room.
Yeah, or they'll throw something, or so it looks like they're getting aggressive and starting a fight. And in D&D, it's they're aggressive. I'm allowed to hit back now. I'm allowed to kill them, or
That's why you don't see a lot of NPCs doing that. I suppose there's a heavy selection factor on that. They've been selected heavily against random signs of aggression around PCs.
I guess that's the other, you don't bare fist hit a guy wearing 100 pounds of plate armor with
it's glowing plate armor, and the sword he's got on his back is on fire constantly.
Although there's that scene that you see in movies sometimes where the bad guy, he has or even a good guy, but let's say the bad guy, he's all this armor, he's really protected, he's really strong, and he's got a prisoner, maybe a woman, or doesn't have to be, but he's got a prisoner, and he leans in close to their face, and he's now I'm going to torture all your family, and you're gonna watch, and he's very intimidating, and then the defiant prisoner is staring out of held back by the henchman or whatever, and then spits in his face.
Oh, spitting in the faces, yeah, that's a good one, yeah.
Oh, you didn't see that coming. But yeah, that's a trope, I guess.
That is always very effective. Spit, there's not much to spit, but you spit at someone and oh my God, does that get tempers riled up. Yeah. That's most people don't even consciously, think, he spit at me, what a horrible insult. It's my reaction, my God, how dare you spit at me, I'm going to kick your ass, buddy. That's a good way to play the use of a 1 on a diplomacy check. Is you accidentally spit at them. You were talking so much, a little bit of saliva.
A little bit. I like that too.
Right
the
on
accidental
his eye.
spit.
Yeah. And that could definitely explain a 1 there. So you were doing good, but like you accidentally spit in his eye. Sorry. So yeah, there's your critical failure. Now here's an option. What if you have to make the check against yourself? Because like things are going wrong, and as you're getting so angry, what if you have to make your own diplomacy check to avoid losing control and just punch the wall in frustration?
Yeah,
because that's what it's like for some people when they get angry. It's like you got to talk yourself down from just doing the wrong thing, and you don't care because you're just so angry right now.
That's true. And in 5th edition, like if you turn to the flaws in the player's handbook, D&D 5th edition player's handbook, you turn to the page that has like flaws and traits, and I think one of the flaws that you can just pick for your character.
Yeah, just because it's on the list of 1, back type doesn't mean you can't use it for any other.
Yeah, and I have a short temper. Like you can pick that right out of the book and say, my character has a short temper, and that can be problematic when playing a character, because sometimes you'll get in trouble when you probably shouldn't.
On the other hand, sometimes there's something to be said about like, okay, things aren't working properly this way. Diplomacy's too slow. Sometimes, how's that saying go? Sometimes all you can do is say, stuff it, draw your sword, and start swinging and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm not always a fan of the hack and slash, but any way to get the plot moving.
Yeah, and I've seen people in real life, like including family members, but also including just people that you interact with, like kind of lose their temper a little bit, and it's very like it doesn't make sense when they do. Like it's very
because it's never your buttons being pushed; it's theirs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's like there have been times where it's like. I see someone else getting angry at work over like maybe the machine like it just isn't working right that they're working with. Maybe something they can't find the tool they need. You know what? Here, tell you what, I got this for you. Like I'll switch out and find the missing piece and figure out why this isn't doing. You go do this task quickly. By the time you get back, I'll see if it's not all set up properly for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice way of alleviating pressure. Not necessarily has to be done.
Good
that
diplomacy.
Way. Yeah. But I mean, there have been a few times for myself I get angry. It's like, no, okay, you're getting a little riled up. You got to back yourself off here. You want to maintain. You don't want to make enemies out of your coworkers here. You just got to, grit and bear it. Don't say any angry words. Just, maybe be a little quiet for a while. And
then, like, what happens when an immovable object and an unstoppable force, like, two people who have, a bad day and anger issues, sort of encounter each other. I mean, what happens? Like
usually at least one of them gets written up. Sometimes the person doesn't come back from walking away. Because sometimes when you walk away, it was like, dude, you walked away when we needed you. You're fired. Please never come back from that.
And like, so in D&D terms, is that the only time?
That's when failure would equal combat. That's when it's like irretrievable. You can't come back from that.
Like, cause you have.
It's rather hard to diplomatize against a decapitated corpse once you killed them. It's kind of hard to come back to your job once you've walked away in the middle of your shift.
So it's like you have your party barbarian who's got a short temper, and he meets the spoiled brat prince who loses his temper all the time and can't regain control. So he's like, yelling at everybody's servants and whatever. So yeah, those two characters, they're gonna.
Eventually, that barbarian's going to put the back of his hand, at the best, across that prince's, cheek.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily the prince. He might also have some combat skills, although he's probably not very disciplined.
Not compared to the barbarian.
Is the barbarian disciplined, or he's just more experienced? I guess he's just better at fighting.
I mean, I'm thinking the barbarian was, like when I was, half your age, I took down a deer. No, I didn't use a bow and arrow. I was hungry, it was there, and I had my hands. I'm a barbarian, what do you expect?
Now, can you have, here's another scenario.
All right.
Can you have sort of angry diplomacy? Like, can you have this sort of yelling match and somehow resolve that? Because I think that's kind of interesting.
Well, that's the thing is I've seen a few times where very heated arguments got ended by one well-placed line. It's all of a sudden, you do that? Versus, other times where it's like diffused with a really good comedic line. And all of a sudden, bam, what was angry sort of stuff is switches off to comedy. And trust me, I got a 2-year-old kid. She gets pretty emotional sometimes when she's crying, sort of thing, and she's really focused. Sometimes you got to distract her with the other one there, so you got to switch up tactics. She's not liking this. She's crying about something. It's like, oh hey, well like, did you bump your head here? Did you bump your chin here? And you wind up doing a little tickle here, and then you get her like attention away from I'm hurting. How dare the universe not wield to my very form, and why isn't everything just soft and cushy like a mattress or something like that? And it's like, okay, you distract her from that, and next thing you know, she doesn't even remember what was going on, why she was crying. She's like, just daddy silly, ha ha ha, I'll go play with my toys now.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I think like angry diplomacy definitely has a good role for it.
I like the thought too of you see this in I guess dramas.
You might want to play that one out though, as I was thinking, just tactically, where you make the diplomacy checks against each other like at a 6-second interval sort of thing as you're going on the shouting matches, who's winning each line as you're going about it. Okay. That way it could almost be like a diplomatic combat.
Yeah.
Sorry, but yes, you were saying?
Oh, just like sometimes those fights, I like how they end with, it's like, and you did that, and that, and it's like, okay, you're right, fine. And then, like, they're still yelling, like, you win, fine, and they're still, like, mad for some reason. Even they're admitting that they lost, but they're still aggressive about it.
I've always likened that to a steam engine. You can't just shut it off. The steam still gets produced. You got to vent it.
Yeah.
You can't just stop on a dime with that sort of thing. So that's where they're still screaming as they're blowing off. It's all done with. The train's reached the station, but you still got to blow off that extra steam as it's going out there.
It's like, fine, I will. Yes, you will. Yeah, I will. Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to get some lunch after this? I am starved after this. I would love some lunch. There's a place over there. It's a bistro, and I'm thinking it's great. Let's go get something and eat the heck out of it.
It occurs to me that maybe that might be a comedy thing. I don't know if that happens.
I've seen that sort of thing happen. You're still very much emotional, but you know what? What's caused you the anger is there. But anger is very much a chemical promotion.
True, yeah.
You can't shut that off. You can be angry on very dry terms, sort of things. Like, I am very upset about the nature of this. But no, once you get into it, it does become a chemical response. And chemicals don't just shut on, shut off. And, they take a little while to work through. So, that's just a nice way of looking at it. And I would dig that.
Can diplomacy end coldly but also still be like... Because you can have a cold, like... Okay, draw my sword, stab. Like, there's also that, right? You realize there's no other way out of the situation.
That's a nice way to describe the NPC getting a 1.
Yeah.
Say, no. Don't bother rolling there, DM. He got a 1. I'm drawing my sword, stabbing.
Yeah.
I've had enough of this. I hate you just so much, but you're not worth the anger. There you go. In, stab, out. I'm not even going to bother wiping my blade. It was just that quick. I can see that. Yeah. The player has always got the option to say the DM rolled a 1 on the NPC's diplomacy check. I think...
Oh, okay, yeah. No, because diplomacy is to influence the other character, and so if you're in charge of that character's mind...
I think officially you're never supposed to do checks to force the NPC saying, you're so charmed, of course you'll do this for him. And you'd never make checks between the players, so anything like that doesn't apply. You can roll to say how charismatic he is, how much he says. It's like, well, you got a 37? Well, that's pretty good. Maybe we should think about it. Sort of thing. But no, you can't say, dude, you agree to his terms because he rolled higher than you.
Yeah, like as a DM, I usually say something like, he seems really convincing, or,
Like, this is a really once-in-a-lifetime deal. I think you guys might be able to get a good situation. It's not without its perils, but you think you might be able to come out on this one, like, all win-win, every sector.
Yeah.
But no, the player always has to say, no, the guy rolled a 1. Sword comes out, I'm hacking heads. So yeah, that's the fun bit where the player has a very interesting advantage on diplomacy as opposed to any NPC.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can always declare their role. That's nice. You can always declare their role as a 20. It's like, oh, you know what, he's got that underdog appeal to him. Maybe we should go out and to check the farm and see, what's being, like anally coring his cows. It happens, it's creepy, and the farmers usually aren't in a position to figure it out themselves because they got a lot of other cow that are now very spooked.
Yeah, they gotta take care of the cows.
Well, unless all of them got cored, then yes. In which case they've got a very different problem, and they're no longer a farmer. They're just a guy with a lot of land. So, it's like, okay, send one of the sons down into town and try and, find someone who's going to help us out, a troubleshooter. And that happens to be a PC by any other name, right?
Yeah.
So, I think there's an interesting chance that you say, you know what, I don't care how bad he was. That was a natural 20 he rolled. I am completely going for what he says. I'm following his cause on this. Let's go check the farm out.
Now, how many encounters, like if you're the DM and you're like sort of preparing an adventure or a game session, how many encounters would you allow? Like, would you explicitly, like, do you think most should be diffusable somehow?
I think it depends on the nature of the enemy they're going up against. If it's something like bandits, you should be able to, like, talk your way through.
There should be some way.
Yeah. Like, you got on the wrong side of the Thieves Guild.
Even if they open with an ambush, like, they open trying to attack you, because they're like, but you could still...
In which case, you can make your diplomacy check as you're, like, fighting defensively. It's like, well, he's not trying to kill us, and his offer's pretty reasonable. Maybe we should stop trying to kill him.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going for a bit more of a horror campaign, the skeletons are never going to listen to you. And it's not just because they don't have ears anymore. If you're going for... let's say you're attacking, like, there's some sort of, like, infestation of slimes coming around. You're not going to be able to diplomatize
the sort of the non-thinking kind of enemies, or differently brained, like they're so alien that they just...
there's no way you're talking to the Eldritch Abominations without suffering some penalty on yourself for even trying. Points for trying, I will make a note of that. I'll see if I can give you some non-combat thing, maybe some insight or something. Yeah, I'm saying insight, but no, it's not going well for you just to even chat with them.
Now, Eldritch, like, are they kind of like almost animal-brained in some ways? Like, just because they have such different... Maybe they have intelligence, but they can't empathize. Like, they don't have...
Well, you're so far removed from them. That's like empathizing with, like, a jar of peanut butter. Peanut butter. I know I've left you in the cupboard for far, far too long.
I feel like
remix you.
Peanut butter has zero intelligence, like zero thought. Like,
and that's what it'd be like for them to try and correlate with you.
They're thinking we're the peanut butter.
You are the peanut butter to them, man. There's like you don't have intelligence on any way I measure. You're peanut butter. That's all you are to me.
Okay. But do the Eldritch Abominations, do they see humans as, like, being in the way? Or?
Well, I guess it depends on your thing. You go up to the Cthulhu end of things. You're not even in the way. You're in the way the same way ants on a sidewalk are in the way.
Yeah.
Whereas you go down to, like, the elder things that made their cities, in the Antarctic, and whose leftover remnants of creating the protean masses wound up spawning life on Earth. They have a bit more of an equal footing with humanity. And so in which case, I think, it's the thing, in the very story, The Mountain of Madness, the guy, who was writing the stuff out, the human being, instead of going, it's a horrible thing from beyond the stars, and go insane from that, he's like, no, these were scientists as much as we were scientists, and thus he's able to empathize with them. So when you get the scale of power much closer, I think it does become easier to empathize. It's like, they may be alien, they may have like a quintilateral symmetry on them, and they may have absolutely nothing that resembles a face compared to us, but they are scientists as we are scientists, and they want the same thing we do, knowing the true image of the universe, even if we go insane from the realization. It's like, yeah, man, brotherhood of sentience going on here. Yeah, once again, it rears its head. It doesn't matter if you're, from beyond the stars with, wings that somehow glide through space. You're a scientist, too. We're in it together, buddy.
Technically every other planet is beyond a star at some point.
Well, yeah, like our star, if it's on the other side of the orbit. Yeah.
That's what it is.
The day star, yeah. There's something to be said about being able to get there within a few moments if you're using solar sails, with the right way. As opposed to, like, they flew through the ether of space on wings from, like, the far, reaches of the Aldebaran system. It's like, wings? I'm not sure how that works out. I'll buy the story because they're alien, and I'm willing to accept some leeway on that, but we better not bring this up again. The wings were only for flying through space. They don't get anything else going on there. We'll keep things a little bit more, like logical, I suppose. On the other hand, I suppose if they've got multi-dimensional wings that, propel them in ways that you cannot have through this three-dimensional world we think we live in. Well,
Maybe. Or like quantum wings, like where quantum interactions cause...
I gotta say, quantum wings, you say that, and all of a sudden I picture just some amazing special effects going on. I can dig it, I am behind it, because the way you phrased it just blew my mind. Now here's an alternative option I had here as a concept for diplomacy. Diplomacy non-verbal. How about through combat? Where the two combatants are fighting using different stances and styles.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Like in Princess Bride.
Yes, like, I am not left-handed, da-da-da.
And he's like, I see your opening with the what blah 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 technique. And
but don't you find that Kappa Fail cancels that out? Not if you've mastered the Izalipa technique. It turns out he is Alipa, and he leaps over there. In which case, yes, you impress each other, and all that, and show your skills off at the same time. Mm-hmm. In which case, I guess technically you're hoping not to hurt the other person. You could even make an argument in this case that because you're showing off each other's techniques, as you're trying to impress and sway each other on the side, you have to stop fighting me. You can't stop pursuing. In which case, it's like instead of actually scoring a hit and reducing hit points, it's like you show your technique better. Oh, you could have done that, and so you do like a little thing like, a little bit of his mustache hair goes whisking off, or you put that line, that would have gone right into his sternum, but you put it between just underneath the armpit. And so in which case it's like a mock hit in that case, just to show your good style.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I remember reading somebody having an internet argument about lightsaber battles, and they were saying, the lightsaber itself is really only the final result of basically a mental battle between the two warriors, because they're already they're using the Force on each other, because they were saying, why can't you just use the Force to grab the other guy's heart and just, crush it or something like that?
I think it works on the layer of that, the Force is, already the living Force that is every living thing that's not a poor droid has the option of, no, you got to overcome their natural Force thing. So that's why you can use your Force to, command the weak-willed to do your bidding, but it can't get the very, strong-willed. The very strong in their internal self-force. You can't do that to them. You can't just crush the heart of, a strong-willed person. You can do that. Clone Warriors, crush. I'm popping hearts left, right, and center. Call me the anti-Valentine. Woo! But no. Once you meet somebody that's an actual challenge, no, your heart-crushing ways mean nothing to them.
Yeah, so if it's Jedi versus Sith, or if for some reason Jedi versus Jedi, something like
happens.
That. The actual lightsaber itself doesn't mean a whole lot, because most of the duel is happening with this. Also, from what I've been told, why isn't everybody running around with lightsabers? Well, that's basically like an infinitely edged sword around there. There's no safe edge. It goes back towards you. It goes back through you. Yeah,
and you need to have some level of clairvoyance in order to learn how to use it. Right? It's not just a level of trying to be a proper user of a lightsaber. You need to know a little bit about what's happening in the future. So in which case, by the time you get into a fight with another lightsaber user, you're seeing all these fractionally different like future situations happening in combat, so that you don't wind up chopping your own arm off.
Yeah, well, it's the same reason I don't own a gun, because I believe that, I don't know if it's true, but I believe that more people die from their own guns than from, than are able to protect their house.
I think it changes whether or not you're in the U.S. versus other areas of the Western society. America has its own little bubble of how things work with guns. And,
I'm not sure exactly. Yeah. I probably shouldn't comment on it, but the reason I don't own a gun is because, I'm afraid of, I don't know how to use it.
Well, here's the thing, though, is you got to load a gun, you got to get a gun ready and all that. A lightsaber, once you turn it on, that is, deadly in any which way it goes. Why they don't have a thing whereby as soon as
should have a password on there?
Yeah, password protected and a grip strength. If you don't maintain that grip strength, it goes away automatically.
I think, isn't there a dead man switch on most lightsabers?
Not to the same degree as what I've noticed.
I guess you could design it, because that's the other
thing. That should almost be like a mandatory thing.
Yeah, in the Star Wars universe, every Jedi does his own lightsaber, so they can have their own custom versions.
Yeah, that's where you get cool purple lightsabers.
And that's why, the guy with this hilt, yeah.
Yeah, that's another issue for another day. I think they could have some interesting stuff with working with a hilt, but that's minutia going on there. But something like a force thing. That'd be almost like those old samurai duels you keep seeing about in the old movies.
That too.
Yeah. Whereby, in that case, you could just, like do your various diplomacy through stance style before anyone actually makes a thing. You see the subtle, like, shift of how he's holding this and how he's moving his feet there. Or, like the martial arts stuff where it's like, my crane style will defeat your tiger, and then they go back and forth between it just to prove no one's actually throwing a punch.
Yeah, right. They're just demonstrating the styles they know. It's like, oh, can I counter that? And then at some point he's like, no, he definitely, that one style he has, I just haven't got to, I haven't got a counter for it. So I guess he wins.
That's when he whips out a gun and shoots him.
Yeah, Indiana Jones style.
It happens sometimes. And that's what happens when you roll a natural 20 on your diplomacy check that way. So, you can't normally beat them, but you pack in heat. There you go, buddy. I think that's a very interesting look at all the different styles of using explanations and different styles. I'm really digging some of these ballroom scenarios.
Yeah.
Like the orcish, resource, hoarding nature is pretty groovy. The dwarven, stamina-based things. Now, here's the thing, though, is I've noticed for a lot of people, they'll always try and use the diplomacy on one person and all that. Just how about working on a grand crowd where you're trying to sway over the mob to make sure they don't go to the Mad Wizard's tower and with pitchforks when they're going to end up getting lightning bolted to death because they only got 4 hit points apiece, dude.
Yeah.
So do you think things work out differently trying it across a group of people rather than targeting to a specific one person?
Yeah, I almost feel like that would be maybe almost.
Or would the mob itself qualify as like a swarm entity in that case?
Well, I guess as a DM, you'd probably want to simplify it to one check, basically, rather than rolling diplomacy against every single person in the crowd.
Or would you just work it on the bell curve? It's like, okay, there's 50 people here. Your check was this. That means you convinced 75% of them to go. Congratulations, thanks to mob mentality. The other 25%, although they do want to go, aren't willing to go by themselves.
Yeah. Now, I don't...
So, you just reduce it down to a single roll and say average is this. You get over that. You convince the majority of them.
I don't know if you've read much about, crowd psychology, but I think there's been some work done on this.
Basically, the dumbest person's in the lead.
Well, and that's the thing. There are a few, and I'm not sure how you determine who gets to be the leader. But usually, in a crowd...
The loudest and
in a
dumbest
mob,
person, yeah.
Yeah, there is usually... there's a couple of people who are sort of leading the charge a little bit.
There are various terms for them, like agent provocateurs and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but so I think if you were if you roll a good enough diplomacy and insight and you have your wisdom check to find out there's a mob here, who looks like they're kind of calling shots or moving things
and you do
around.
See that too, you'll be in a movie all the townsfolk are huddled up in one little area to so that way the monsters aren't getting them all one by one, right? And then you got the one guy we're all trapped in here, it's just going to be a smorgasbord. He's the one negative factor. You got to focus your diplomacy, or failing that, your fist, to make sure he's not riling the other ones up into a state of panic.
Yeah.
And so by targeting him, then, instead of just trying to raise the morale of the crowd, you focus on him, and that winds up making sure they don't panic enough that they go running out into the monsters, actual smorgasbord area.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a knowledge psychology skill, in some versions of D&D.
Modern should be at least something like that.
Yeah, and if you had ranks in that, this is getting a little bit
synergy checks and all that stuff.
Synergy gets a little bit
that's the thing. I think if you have the ranks, it's nice to find a way to use them, especially in unorthodox ways.
Yeah. So if you know something about, knowledge crowd psychology means your character has read up on articles about, how, because we have, modern day, we have this research done.
Such levels of minutiae we have that the ancients never even dreamed of.
Yeah, so this modern person can say, I know from that I read that psychology paper about crowds, and so I know to target this person, and then they use maybe it's a diplomacy roll, but it gets a bonus from their knowledge psychology or something like that. I don't know.
Well, you could be, it's but, I am a fool and an entertainer. Although these people are panicked, I will make a diplomacy check, but I'm also making an entertainment check. So that as I deliver, the message of, there will be hope, I'm doing, stuff like juggling to show how flippantly easy things are. Look at me, I'm juggling, this is nice. And if I was panicking, how could I juggle so many balls at once? And then that way, your other check could wind up applying in. Depends on how you want to try and go about it. I think almost anything can work.
Yeah. Well, if you're if you're a hero...
Actually, earlier on this week, I was watching an old movie, Island of Terror, 1966, kind of Hammer horror thing. One guy was panicking on there, and so they had to try and target him. It's like, hey, bucko, either you shut up or I'll punch you, sort of thing. And then later on, when he did, start panicking, and people started going to rush out to where the monsters were, the mayor himself shot his gun in the air and goes, I swear to God, I'll shoot the first person that moves now. And in a nice, like Irish accent sort of thing to make it sound a little bit more charming. But that's basically what he said, and that's that's an intimidation check to make that work. But it's congratulations, you've shown superior force of arms. You can try making a diplomacy check. You might want to just work with your intimidation that way.
Yeah, I like that too. An aspect of diplomacy is a little bit of that sort of taking charge, like. If you're, like I was going to bring up an airplane that's, about to crash, and you're the hero, so you have a chance of saving it or whatever, or that's
the
what your
skill tree
hero
says, although you've got a -6 to your checks, that's still better than the guys who got no skill ranks because they're all NPCs.
But it looks like the plane is going to crash, and so and the passengers find out about it, and they're like, oh, what do you? And then sort of like, I don't know.
Forget this. I'm just going to open up the door out the side of the plane and jump. Maybe I'll survive.
Yeah, I don't know.
But if you open up the door, then guarantee everyone's going to like, oh no, things are going even bad to worse, and that's when everyone dies because you can't keep the plane up properly because all things are going haywire.
But then you have the stewardess who's on the plane who actually has maybe a little bit of training, and I don't know if they do training.
I believe they do have training on panic situations,
but
and they do review that on a regular basis. It pays to be okay on that sort of thing.
But they're authoritative, and they're saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll, orderly fashion. I don't know what they say, but yeah, something.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have not crashed. However, we have landed in the ocean. I would like you to go to the exits I mentioned at the start of this. I hope you were paying attention.
Hope you read your little card.
Hope you were paying attention when I mentioned where the exits are, but I want you to proceed, orderly towards them. If you don't know where it is, just follow the guy in front of you. And then we're all going to go out on the life rafts, and we're going to make sure we all get out there, because we should have about 30 minutes before the plane is sinking. Don't bring your bags with you, but we're, just going to, get on out there, and we can make this happen.
I love that thought, too, because I don't know if you've flown WestJet.
Well, I haven't crashed with WestJet, I'll say that. No, yeah, I've flown with them before.
Like you were saying, the stewardess or the flight attendants, they do a little bit. They're kind of funny. I
remember like when I was on there, they'd be like, okay, guess how many years of experience all of the stewards, and stewardesses here have combined, and whoever guesses right, we'll take a list and pick from them, and they get a prize. Very nice sort of thing.
I find it very amusing, like, to imagine, like, a horrible disaster scenario, like people are dying and stuff, and, like, blood everywhere, like, oh, my bone's sticking out of my leg, it's broken. But the stewardess is in that situation. They're still, like, cracking jokes. There's, like, they're helping out, like, they're being heroes. They're doing what they're trained to do and everything. But at the same time, they're just, like, still have that WestJet attitude of, like,
oh my God, I've lost the lower half of my leg. I was like, well, where was it when you last saw it? Might be a little too soon to be making that joke, but I guarantee they're going to stop what they're thinking for a second. Like, what the heck does that mean? A good line is a good line to use. Sometimes not appropriate, but a good line's a good line.
I guess, yeah, you can use a little bit of humor to do diplomacy too.
You might have to fend off, some sort of like legal assault later on. It's like, they were really flippant when I lost my leg and the whole thing. It's like, well, we're just trying to like alleviate the situation and make sure you weren't panicking too much.
I would like to see that movie where it's the air disaster that like is just.
Can we get David Spade as like the attendant on that one?
Yeah,
I think his dry, like acerbic, nature would really sell that scene. He did do that, a flight attendant sort of thing back as a Saturday Night Live sketch.
The goodbye. Bye.
Yeah, that's the one exactly. And then, they'd be like, make the crack in the lines. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, we were in an accident. I'm not hurt. So, just come on, we'll keep doing it right here. And if you got a problem with that because you're missing a leg, well, jeez, you're slowing us down.
All right. I should mention our social media.
Yes,
if you are incredibly offended by our flippant attitude towards plane crashes, Send us an email about it.
We're not flippant that way, but it's an interesting perspective to take.
Yeah, it's horrible. Like we're not pro plane crash, but
although from the context of the airplane movie, I kind of am. With Leslie Nielsen and all that. Simply because
wish that one had crashed.
No, that one produced so many comedic things going on there. It's like, oh boy, I'm so happy this plane all went haywire. That way, I had so many jokes to watch. It was so far above and beyond. It took refuge in audacity, of course. So, there's that.
Yeah, so send us email. thesimulationist@gmail.com is our simulationist email. Tweet at us. Tweet at me, @SpaceBoot1 is my Twitter account.
That's the numeral 1, not like ONE, SpaceBoot1.
Yeah, SpaceBoot, just 1, number 1. Although, I should just create one with my actual... Nah, it's too late now. I like having that
You've done it for too many iterations. Anyone going back through
I don't have that many followers, but yeah, anyways.
Well, you don't want to lose them. Keep the name.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I could use... so, let's see. There's that. There's Facebook, where you can type comments as long as you want that anybody can
Provided
see.
no one's going to flag it as a spam or lewd sort of thing.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the normal internet etiquette. As far as that goes,
I was about to correct you on that one. As long as you keep it clean, right?
No, it's fine. But yeah, no, just chat with us on
Facebook. I'd be okay personally if you don't keep it clean, but if you don't keep it clean, there's a chance that what you say will get flagged, and then it gets deleted, and then how would we know? So that's why,
But you can like our page on Facebook and then have conversations about the episode and when we post it or whatever, and stuff like that. And share us with your friends. We'd love to just get out to more people because we think this is a pretty entertaining podcast.
Share us with your enemies. Call it a diplomacy chat.
That too. We're also on YouTube. It's the same thing, really. It's just another way to get it. YouTube.com/thesimulationist.
Depends on your preference, style.
There's also comments enabled on the YouTube channel, so if you'd like to comment that way. We're also on Google+, but I don't use that one too much, so you might hopefully...
don't worry. There are ways for you to get a hold of us, though, one way or another.
And I think that's all. If you find us on iTunes or Stitcher or some other podcast site... and iTunes allows reviews, for example, we would love to have a review from you. Doesn't matter. Give us as many stars as you think we need.
But you can't give us negative stars. Ha ha ha.
That's true. I mean, by not leaving a review, I guess that's 0 stars. I don't know.
That's the only way to give less than 1-star reviews, isn't it?
I think that's the case. Yeah, that's all the social media, I think.
Yeah.
There is also a Patreon. You don't have to visit it, but if you feel like financially supporting out,
pay the cost of everything we do here.
Yeah,
these things are battery powered. We're talking into right now. I mean, and they're not infinitely charged batteries. We're still living in the present. We're not in the future yet. You are, because you're listening to this well after we've recorded it. But I don't think battery technology is going to change that quickly.
If you want to help out with the cost of the show, we would greatly appreciate that on our Patreon. That's a way to get that to us. At patreon.com/ I think I used SpaceBoot1.
Ah, okay.
But it's all the podcast. That's
your local search engine should help you out any which way you go about her.
Yeah, and I think I'll put it in our show notes. I'll put a link to the Patreon. Also, and I think that's all I guess we should wrap up with final thoughts on diplomacy.
I'm personally of the hybridized camp, sort of thing. You can't just do the role. You can't just, act through it. Because you are not your character. The best method is by going one or the other and then making things up as you go. I mean, just tonight, just by figuring out, how do we explain something like that? We came up with different types of balls, and soirees and other, fancy engagements. I am really digging the orc style here, man.
Yeah.
It's you got to try and get the resources to prove your dominance, but you also show that you are still beholden to the king themselves, the orc king that way. And so I think there's some very interesting ways, the engagement on such a larger scale like that should definitely show what the race is like. You would not see gnomes doing something like that, although they might do tricks sort of thing, some sort of hiccup juice in there, and he caused a hilarious prank sort of thing. That's definitely him. And so congratulations that way. You wouldn't see dwarves doing that. You wouldn't see orcs doing that. And so, have it reflect the people you're in for the ball. Who's hosting it? What are things like for them? Maybe they're just a traditionalist. Maybe it's a standard fancy ball. You got to dress up, in all those fancy clothes. Maybe it's maybe he's an anarchist or thing, and so you got to dress up in something that isn't clothes. Oh my. But yeah, make sure in this case, I'll use ballroom in the ball, as a generic term for it. It should be the same as the person hosting it. The ball should be them, in a little bit more metaphorical terms.
Okay, yeah, I like it.
Other than that, I think we went through a whole lot of interesting options, how to work things through, play things through.
Yeah, it occurred to me. I mean, there's diplomacy is a big
infinite
topic.
varieties on this one, yes.
But also, it's funny because diplomacy, the way we understand it in the modern world, is it's sort of this vast, it affects geopolitical, nations' relationships to each other. And we sort of touched on that a little bit, but we didn't. Most of what we talked about was just how the players, or the small adventuring mercenaries, how they diplomatize with their own interests, but they might represent two opposing governments or something like that.
Yeah, like what happens when you fail to your kingdom? Like what penalty to your kingdom?
Yeah, are you now at war? Like if you fail that, I don't think failing one diplomacy check would.
Unless you get it pretty darn bad.
Yeah, but yeah, is your country suddenly at war?
You accidentally spit in his eye and you tried to make up for it by licking it clean.
Yeah.
That's at least closed doors there, man. You're next check is going to happen after you manage to get a hold of them again. They do not want to see you at all. Border is closed between your kingdoms. And
one other little thing that I think I hinted at a little bit, but I was hoping maybe we can't really talk too much. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. But the idea that you can have a diplomacy check. And maybe you do fine with the king, I'm diplomatizing with the king, but some advisor somewhere is I don't like how that foreigner is getting so much influence to close. So you get success here, but you're also pissing off somebody.
In which case it's a dominoes thing where the DM gets set up unless you get a huge result, you got to roll 15 or higher on this one to please everyone. But there's pleasing the king is a 10 or higher, but to please all the members of the court, well, that's an 18 or higher. So
and they might sneak around and stab you in the back.
And so then it's 10 higher. So okay, you got the king happy. But for every point under the 18 you needed to roll, that's how many people of the royal court you've managed to torque off. So how's that play out for you?
Yeah.
Then congratulations, you're in court politics.
Yeah.
So I like that. I kind of dig that too.
Okay. So I think we can.
So there you go. Well, I guess we'll be talking to you again in 7 days.
7 days. Awesome. Thanks for listening so much. I've been Josh Trelevin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
Send money. Send Patreon. Send money.